So, good morning, Sally-Ann, and welcome to 2023. Here we
Good
are.
morning. It's I was thinking this morning when we were going to meet, when did we last do this? Was it in the summer last year?
I think it might have been. I think it's quite a while back.
It
I
feels
think it
like
is
a
quite a
while.
while back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess, we've both been busy. Life gets in the way. I know we said we'd drop back in, wouldn't we, every now and then with one of these, and just kind of talk about something that is topical, feels important, or where we're at. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we said this one because we're at the beginning of a new year would be a bit of a review, didn't we, of
Yes. Yes.
last year and looking forward into next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting time at the beginning of the new year, isn't it? But
Yeah, it feels like it is actually. Lots and lots of plans, some looking back, although I think I'm out of my looking back phase, if
okay.
that makes sense. I think that for me happens probably towards the end of December.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then maybe a little bit around sort of Christmas and New Year. But then
Yeah.
as soon as kind of we're into the new year, I'm immediately into, right, okay, new year, new start for this year. Let's kind of focus and start thinking
Yeah.
about what this year is going to all be about. But I don't know, are you like that, or is it different for you?
I would say I'm like that in general,
Yeah.
but I have to admit, last year and this year, so really since I've been doing this full time, it's been a bit of a slower start for me, like in January, because I think one of the reasons, because my studio is so unbelievably cold, I don't really come back to the studio super quickly after Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's partly just because it's dark and cold and it's not very inspiring. And I remember last year I was even later. I didn't really kick in till like February, or late Jan. And I think, there's just been this thing for me of I've just been really conscious. I've been talking about it on social media as well, of this leaving space idea. And because when we're doing the looking back and we're doing the reviewing and looking forward, it's exciting to put things in the calendar, but sometimes when I feel there's lots there and I'm looking at everything, I can feel quite overwhelmed. And so it's like, where's the space for things? And last year showed me that lots of things came up in my year that were totally unplanned, totally unexpected. But because I had, not intentionally, but I just naturally left some space, I was able to say, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. Can I fit that in? Yes, I can fit that in. So this year, intentionally, I've been leaving space, and already things have been dropping in that I think, wow, if I'd have had things back to back, I'd have no space in my calendar. And also, I think if we had all of our year planned out, like we know everything that's going to happen, then I'd feel like I was just going through the motions of doing those things.
It's really interesting as I hear you talk, because I think this to me, as I'm hearing you speak, feels like it's about personality type actually. Because you and I've talked a little bit about this before, haven't we? About, Jan, of your desire to kind of be able to be spontaneous around things, and that feels really important. And, if you have too much in, like you said, you feel overwhelmed and tied down. I feel exactly the opposite, actually. If I can't look forward through the year and go, right, I've got that project and that project and that project, and I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I know that I have planned and put things in place in terms of both, developing my art, but also having a business, then I feel anxious because I'm going to go, I go, well, where the hell's the work going to come from then?
Well, there is that.
Yeah, it's not going to come out of the ether. It's in my mindset. Like I feel like I need to be doing something to kind of put things in place so that things will happen. Well, and if I don't, then I get anxious. So, different kind of process, I guess.
It's really daunting to not have things in, because you do look at it and think, wow, and especially when you hear other people, they're like, I've got that exhibition on, I'm doing that, I've got this course planned out. And I just think, oh, geez, like, oops. But it's not that, I do have things on the calendar and they're
yeah. Well, I know you do, because you've got creative shift coming up and all sorts of stuff, haven't you? Yeah.
But I've not got lots of bits happening. And
bits. Not a good idea.
One of the biggest things I think is I only have our local art trail planned for the summer. So in terms of showing work this year, I don't have anything on my calendar to do that.
Okay.
And that sort of aligns with where I ended at the end of last year. So I was looking forward to a winter of painting and not having any deadlines, not having anything booked, but just being able to paint freely and sort of see what comes out of that. Well, that's rolled into this year. So yeah.
Yeah, see how it goes. So we said, didn't we? We said we would sort of talk about the development of our work individually last year, kind of what we saw happening and maybe where we're going and what we think that might be about. And we might touch on some of the projects we've been doing really, and perhaps recap on those, maybe from the perspective of lessons learned, I think. Like what was important, what was useful, what did we learn from those experiences, and then maybe a little bit about what we're going to be doing next year. So if anybody's interested in that, they will, be able to follow up on some of those projects and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Cool. Do you want to go?
Do you want to go first, or shall I go first? I don't mind in terms of in terms of the work. Yeah. So what was last? I think I was just sort of pulling together some photographs of my work over the year. And I mean, I felt like I was quite prolific last year. In fact, I think in a message to you, I said I'd made a lot of paintings. I'm just going to check actually just how many I did make last year. But I think it was something ridiculous.
A lot last year, yeah.
Yeah, it was something like nearly. It was over 30. It was probably getting on towards 40, and that wasn't counting just closing down that spreadsheet. I mean, that wasn't counting all of the sort of smaller work that I do on paper and stuff like that. So that was, it was kind of like I was making a lot. But I think last year was also just like that for me. I think because I knew that I was doing this big transition, like you going full time at the end of the year, I was like, right, really get on with it. And
I've got to do this.
I've got to do this. There's no mucking about now. But it felt okay. It didn't feel like pressurized particularly or anxious. It felt more like I was in a really productive kind of creative, energetic zone. And what I was doing
wise, you were stepping into that new area, weren't you? So it's like you've got that positive energy that's kind of driving you along with the anticipation of what's to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really did feel like that. I mean, most of the work, in fact, last year was very much about this idea that I'd had. I got very interested in the earlier sort of expressions that we put down when we first start painting, those kind of first sort of marks, and the reaction, I think, also between materials and surface. So there's two things I think were running alongside each other. I'll show some images actually. I'll just share screen and show what I was working on. Here we go. So I'll just go to this one. So you can just see that was single one. So this is one of the first ones from last year. It's I'm trying to think, it's 18 by 24 inches. So it's a fairly substantial piece. Yeah. And I called it Naissance. So it was part of this whole series called Naissance, which is all about sort of the birth of things. And this is a painting where I'm using calico over a wooden panel. Okay. So it's a finer weave kind of cotton, which I really like actually. I think I like it because it's much smoother than canvas, but you've still got a little bit of texture in it. Yeah. And I think what I was wanting to explore was this. I mean, like here you can see this. I think I'm just going to zoom in on this bit. So this is actually bare canvas here, where the only marks are these pencil marks, these drawing marks from what was probably a water-soluble wax pastel, although I think it's actually an oil pastel there. And then this sort of bleed, really, of probably a water-soluble wax pastel, maybe some graphite. And I wanted to leave a lot of that in the painting. Now, there's not a huge amount of that in this one, because in the end, to resolve the actual composition, I ended up having to use a lot more paint, I think, than I perhaps really wanted to. But it felt okay, at the same time, because sometimes that's how a piece develops, isn't it? But just come back out. Yeah, but this piece here was a piece of collage, so I was very much in this place of wanting to explore this. And that's what the work was about, really, for nearly all of last year. It was very much about this sort of its expression and seeing how much I could leave, really. So you can see that in this one. This is a 16 by 16. Again, lots of collage on wooden panel. And again, using multiple layers of collage to build up the surface as well. You know, and again, you can see here pure white paper showing through, and this area here. Same on this one. This one's slightly smaller. This is a 16 by, oh no, not 16, 12 by 12. And again, you know, it's a lot, the paint compared to how I was working maybe, you know, even a few months previously, I think it's got a different kind of quality to it because I'm using inks for a start, so they're much more fluid. But I'm also, you know, I'm kind of allowing the paint to do what it wants to do, really, but also pushing it around as well to make it do what I want it to do. So there's a kind of combination, really, of two things going on, I think, which are, you know, for me felt really interesting just to keep exploring this kind of expression.
You can see they're much thinner layers. You know, there's lots of translucency in there. Yeah.
I mean, just sort of this area here, I think you can, you know, see it where they're, you know, very much more watery.
Yeah,
I think, and across here. So there's quite a few like that. In fact, I'll skip past those onto this one, move out. So this is, again, this is probably from, let's just try, I think this would be from the spring, I think. So starting to work with some lighter colors as well. But I do that, I mean, in terms of my, you know, you kind of decisions around what colors am I going to use. I think often what I'll find is I'll get kind of immersed in a particular palette for a little while and I'll use those colors a lot and then I'll kind of move on to something new. So this, you know, I've gone from using those kind of slightly grungy browns and dark reds and oranges to using kind of lighter colors here. And I think, you know, I'm starting to push this a bit further because this is just paper on panel. So I think the intention, again, behind this work was to still use the texture, but for it to be more delicate, I think, as a whole. Both that one, let's go like this one, again, similar thing, you know, really allowing those first expressions with the water, you know, to stay.
So transitioning from sort of heavily layered, thick paintings that you were doing, and now you're moving into this one, where you've got this desire to leave more space and these expressive marks, first marks. How are you handling that in your mind? Are you having the questions we always get as, is it enough, or what should it be? What's the conversations for you?
It was interesting. I think that happened probably, actually, no, it did happen quite a lot. Probably pretty much all through the year, really, I think. I mean, this one in particular, you know, I did find myself sort of thinking, is this enough? You know, should I put more in? Can I leave it as it is and let it stand? You know, and I think where I came around to with that was to go with we kind of go with, well, look, do I like this as it is? Do I like this as it is? And I went, yeah, I do, you know. Okay, am I willing to show people that this is what I like? Well, I guess I am, because, you know, that's what this work's about, really. That's what the work feels like to me it needs to be about, you know, to kind of settle on something that I like and then hope that other people like it too. Because I've never been of a view that painting for other people is in any way a good thing. You know, as soon as you start to think what other people might like, then you've lost it, I think.
Lost it, haven't you?
Yeah, you know, so I had to stay with, you know, do I feel like this is enough? Do I like this? And I did. You know, I did. I liked it a lot, actually. I felt, for me, it felt like this was one of the pieces from the summer that I really liked, that felt to me like it was really strong, you know, and it was kind of really starting to express what I felt like I wanted to express.
I guess if you keep that in mind, if you keep your objective in mind and your desire of why you want to do this work, why you want to create in this way, that helps battle the conversations, because you've already kind of made a deal with yourself, right? This is what I want to do, you know, so it's just a case of trying to quieten that other voice. So would you say from the beginning of the year when you started in this way to where you ended in December, did the conversation quieten down for you? Is it a conscious thing that you worked on through the year, and by the end of it you found results?
I think it is. I think what happened was, as I kind of made more of these paintings, and actually interesting, the response from other people, even though that wouldn't have stopped me doing it, but I think the response that I got from people was that they really liked them, and in fact, you know, lots of people bought them, you know, just kind of gave me more it was kind of external validation that actually, you know, I was onto something that was effective, I think, as a piece. But I mean, even if without that, I still would have carried on like that. But I think that just was like extra, you know, it's just like an extra bit of a boost that actually it's not, you're not just you like that likes this, Lynn, other people like it too.
Yeah, and especially if you're selling your work, you know, I mean,
exactly. There's no better validation, is there really, in some respects, that people like it. But I would still have continued, I think, because I liked it. You know, it felt like there was something that I was saying that felt quite important, actually, and you know, that continued on to these, where I felt that this was probably this one and this one, these two pieces were two where I felt like I'd really got to the point of that kind of a real minimalist almost response, you know. I mean, because in terms of they were interesting really, because they came at almost, you know, like sometimes you can create a painting and it feels like it happens in a single breath.
Yeah.
You know, that's what there were four of them that kind of all happened at the same time. And it felt like that's what they were, you know. I hardly had to do anything to them.
Yeah.
You know, it was very simple, very spare. And I kept looking at them and thinking, is that enough? Am I done? You know, really? Because all life, in fact, of course, it's not all life, because, you know, that whole process of sitting with it and deciding that, you know, this is where I'm going to leave it is a really big one, I think, for lots of artists.
Well, you're constantly pushing your ideas, because obviously you started at the beginning of the year wanting this kind of piece. You couldn't have just gone from your heavily painted paintings down to something that you're describing now quite minimal and leaving lots of space like paper or canvas. You have to go through all the iterations you've just showed us, because it's like your developmental process of it, you know. If you'd have done this in January, it would have been like, oh, wow, that's not enough, I can't do that. But because you became familiar with your own work through the year, it's done you more.
Yeah, wow. I think that's very much it. Yeah. So there was this one which I was really pleased with. This actually, it feels like this is a kind of a really good expression of what I wanted to say. That one and this one, both of them, you know, kind of with that the simplicity, I think, and the, you know, the softness and the subtlety, I think, of some of the marks. And it just felt that, you know, that lightness of touch felt really important. So, and then there were a couple of others that were bigger, and these were not as straightforward, I don't think, because they were bigger, you know. And I think I was finding the technical element of taking the form of expression of this kind of lightness and how I was working with the surface, and it was, you know, translating that larger was actually quite difficult, just because, you know, needing bigger tools, more space, you know, just kind of working on a much bigger surface area. You know, it's not as easy to push a whole load of paint around when actually you're trying to push it around on something that is, I think these are, how big are they? They're 24 by 36 inches, you know, so they're fairly substantial. Whereas those two previously were only 12 by 16. You know, so in terms of like the arm movement to make the paint move, you know, it's very different.
And just the quantity of space it shifts massively, doesn't it? Because you know, the size of the shapes really matters, you know, how much of the canvas or space it's taking up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's interesting. I haven't thought this through because I'm just speaking as we go, but it's interesting that the pieces are feeling lighter and more spacious, and yet your palettes, apart from the middle one that you said about the summer that you showed us, the palettes are really still quite dramatic. There's still those richness of your reds and the sort of umber colors and the black that you use, but they're feeling more spacious.
I know. Interesting. How is that?
Maybe it's because they're more translucent. Maybe it's because you're using a similar palette, but in a thinner, you know, thinner layers. Or
I think that probably could be. I mean, this one, I think, which is, you know, really quite dark and dramatic. You know, I really like this one actually.
This is lovely. When I got there. I don't think I've seen this one.
Have you not? No, it's sold at Manchester actually at the art fair. It went very quickly.
What size is this one?
Same as the other, 24 by 36, so it's quite a big piece.
Really nice.
Yeah. So I mean, in this, I discovered a kind of new technique as well, which I got very, very excited about, which was to, you know how it is, don't you, when you discover something new? It's to how do I do it? It's to use things like water soluble graphite and kind of wax pastel, layered with medium. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so to kind of make some marks, spray it with water, get that first layer down, then seal it, and then create texture in the medium, and then put more graphite over the top, and
Okay.
yeah, and let that spill over, water that down as well. In other words, it's kind of, I suppose in a way you're using lots and lots of layers of lots of thin glazes.
Yes. Yeah.
Interspersed with layers of gloss medium, which creates some texture.
Yeah.
And I think it creates some lovely effects. In fact, I've just sort of, where has it gone? It's underneath. That's it there. Yeah, so you can see.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I really like that. And there's some more of it there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is a really lovely piece.
Yeah.
Was this, did you say paper onto panel or canvas?
Yeah, lots and lots of paper. So what I end up doing is kind of, layering the paper. So if an area is kind of not working, rather than painting over it, which is what I would have done previously and creating lots of thick texture, what I'm now doing actually is putting another layer of paper over the top or collaging over it, which almost like brings back the freshness, really. Yes, I think enables me to kind of go back to start almost, which has been great actually to be able to do that. And I think, can only be achieved in that way on a panel. You're not going to be able to do that on canvas in the same way because it just doesn't allow you, really.
So would you say by the end of the year that you were bringing more collage in? Did you start off?
Way more. Yeah, way more. Yeah, because I mean, on this, I would say the bulk of it is made up of, pieces of paper collaged against each other that have been printed on gel plate, actually. Some of them painted, and some of them then me working back into them over them again. But, a lot of that, actually. You're doing a lot of that. Yeah. It was an interesting year, because at the beginning of the year, I wasn't using a huge amount of collage, just bits and pieces. But by the end of the year, in many respects, this is a painting made up of collage papers.
Yeah.
With lots of line work worked in over the top, extra glazes, all sorts of things really to integrate the whole and make it feel like an entire piece rather than too disparate. Because I always think that's one of the things that's quite, for me anyway, doesn't feel like it works in my work. I know lots of people do it in that. I know you kind of in a way do quite a bit of that. It works fantastic in your work. I do it in mine and it just looks like a dog's breakfast really. It just doesn't work. So I guess just about how we work, isn't it? So so it was an interesting year in terms of the work. I mean, it doesn't feel like that's where I'm at the moment. In fact, I'm kind of asked to stop sharing.
I was going to say to you before we move on. So where are you at the moment? Do you feel that last painting is a jump start for this year? Are you still heavy on collage, or what are your thoughts?
I think I am. I think what's happened is I've had a bit of a side move, I think, actually, interestingly, which has kind of thrown me for a bit of a loop. I think I had an old triptych that was on 3 canvases, and I wanted to finish it because I thought actually it's been around for ages, and where am I going to go with this? So I've had a little bit of I don't know, it's almost like I've had a bit of an immersion in something slightly new and different, which came out of a couple of pages from my sketchbook from the sketchbook challenge last year. So there were some colours and some expression that I really liked. And it seemed to go quite well with the canvas pieces that I was doing. So I sort of translated that across. But then I decided I didn't really like it. And I kind of got into a whole struggle with it. And then I wasn't really sure where I was going with it. And it was very different from what I'd been doing because I was working on canvas. So, of course, you can't really, work on it in the same way. And plus the fact that triptych had already got shed loads of paint on it. So I couldn't begin to work into those with that same early expression by keeping the marks. So in a way, I feel like I've been sort of doing a bit of remedial action, I suppose, on something that has been around for a while, that is a little bit in my old style, that I'm trying to marry up with what I'm doing now. And that's actually been quite challenging, but I think I've kind of got there. Okay. In terms of where I am where do I think the next lot of work's going to go? I think I'm still going back into this stuff with the collage, actually. I've got a couple of wooden panels that I've started in that way. And increasingly, I'm noticing when I go to the studio, they're the things that are really calling to me, that they're the ones that I want to go and work on, not the other stuff. you know, so I think I might have to kind of follow that impetus
Yeah.
actually, you know, because that's where the energy is, you know, rather than these. I think it would this is it's a footnote maybe, you know what I mean, or something like that.
Yeah. I was going to say, this is probably a reminder of, you know, you go back to something, and even though we think, oh, I'll just go and, you know, do it, it's probably a reminder that we actually don't want to be there. And it's like, you know, how does your energy feel when you know you're going back to that as a opposite, as opposed to when you're faced with all those new panels and you're thinking about your collage, and, you know, so it's just like that extra guiding point that's probably like, Lynn, you should come this way.
Yeah, I think it is. And to kind of like big note to self, you know, which is that it's really difficult to revisit things.
Yes.
You know, maybe what I needed to do with those panels actually was to, I don't know, not necessarily bin them, but, you know, not to attempt to do that. And maybe that's the learning actually from that experience is, you know, it's very difficult to do that, to go back and, you know, to revisit something when you've clearly moved on really significantly.
Yes, in your mind. And then it's, and it's awkward even in your marks and everything to get back in, isn't it? Because you're just not in that space.
No, I wasn't at all. The only way, in fact, I've made the panels that I've been working on feel like they are consistent with the work that I've been doing is, in the end, was to put a whole load of really kind of slightly grungy black glaze over them. And now I look at them and think that feels better. I need to go back in and brighten them up a bit. But, you know, they feel much better. So it's interesting. Very interesting.
That is interesting.
So what about you? Do you want to share screen? Because I've just realised that we haven't done the permission to do that, have I? You were going to share your screen, I think, and talk about your work from last year. Yeah.
I was going to just give you a little update of where I kind of ended. So last year was a bit funny for me, really, because I was showing my work in the summer at our local art trail. So I'd been working on some pieces and ended on this piece. So this is one of my last pieces, and I really liked this piece. So it got to, and this is my attempt, I guess. Like, I'm always in this position where I'm trying to bring all of my things together, all of the loves, the drawing, the collage, the stitching, in a whole like mixed media world. It was, I mean, this painting this is one of the things that you were talking about. The painting had been hanging around for so long. You see the bottom here where there's these slight stripes. So that was an underpainting, an original painting. It wasn't really going anywhere. I'd had it around for a while, and it was that thing, kept trying to go back into it. So I thought,
how big is it? How big is it, by the way? 24 by 36. Oh, right. Okay. So same size as those that I was showing then.
Same as ones you were showing. So in the end, I thought I can't get back into where it was. So I just painted it all this greeny blue colour. And this was just a really rough, like a big sort of rectangle.
Yeah, I can see.
And then it just started to build. And one of the things that really propelled me forward with it, because I'm always trying to bring fabrics back into my work, I just decided to start working with larger pieces of linen and collage them in. So this was the first piece that went down, this large square here. And these are they're almost like drop cloths, you know. I purposefully use these when they're around my workstations, so I get all these ad hoc marks on them, and just all spontaneous things, so they're not clean and perfect when they go into the work. And it just sort of built from there, really. But it was challenging at the time, because this was a new way of working, to bring fabrics in such a big way, and to bring all these more obvious collage pieces in, so they feel a little bit more, some of them aren't as embedded in as others. So that was different. And then I still wanted to get these like the drawing with paints, some of these more botanical shapes. I wanted to get some of those in. So this is where I ended, and this I really liked it. So I thought, this is great. And then I had so that was in the summer, and then Creative Shift was starting in the September, and because I had a large group, I decided that I wouldn't paint throughout. I didn't want to be distracted, so I gave all my time and energies to my course, which was amazing. And what I thought would happen when I stopped Creative Shift, when we ended it, which was November, I thought, oh, I'll just hop back into my practice, and then I'd have a winter of painting with like no deadlines. And obviously what happened is it was cold and dark in the studio. I wanted a bit of a break. And so I didn't really resume my practice. And then I started to feel, well, funnily enough, I just want to touch on this because it ties into this year. I chose a word of the year for last year, and I chose connection. And what I wanted was to connect with artists, connect with people. And that was the focus. And I absolutely feel like I did that. And it was amazing. However, I feel I lost connection with my practice in the latter half of the year. So one, my balance was, one was going amazingly well, but the other one had sort of plateaued and didn't move. And so when we were coming into this year, I thought, right, this year's calendar, I know I said I've left space, but actually it's still looking as busy as last year in terms of teaching and things. So I thought, well, and I don't want to change that because it's, it's part of my business and I love it, but I thought I can't risk losing this connection. I somehow need to regain this connection with my practice, even when times are busy, like we can't always get in the studio. We can't always paint. We can't always. So I thought I need some sort of tie. So what started coming to mind, it was, well, there was a bit of a backstory to this, but I won't go into that. But I knew I needed to keep in with my practice. So I thought I've never really used a sketchbook in that way, but I needed something I could return to, just a place, like a little sanctuary, whether you're out traveling, whether you're at home, whether you're somewhere. So I introduced this idea of a playbook. And I wanted it to be... I didn't want to name it a sketchbook, but it's kind of like a scrapbook, an ideas book, an everything book, where you can put your thoughts, where you can put your travel tickets, where you can put your collages. And so throughout over Christmas, I started to sort of prepare this. And let me just see if I can fizzy these along. So I started just with, like fill-in pages. I took a few supplies home with me over Christmas. And just to see, can I do this? And these aren't precious at all. They're just pages where I'm putting everything together. And I'm not thinking of these as in can these translate to paintings? Can these translate to bigger work? It's not really that. However, I'm starting to really see how they could. And that's kind of captured my interest at the moment. How can I, because it is teaching me things, proportions, how I like things, how much line work I like in it. Do I like things at the edges? So that's kind of, this is where I've been at this year. So, but I think what's interesting is how I ended on this, how the ideas are still staying very
aren't they?
current. And I'm still really heavily interested in these fabrics. So at the end of last year, actually, when I was, when I was doing little bits of things, trying to get back into my practice, I started painting lots of larger scale fabrics. Because if this was on a 24 by 36, think how big that piece of fabric would need to be. And what's the preparation in that fabric? Is it how much of this, this preparation would I need to do to achieve this size? So that's kind of where I've been at, and bringing back in, there's lots of things that you have around your studio, your notes from years ago, your little drawings, whatever, and just in a really playful way, can I bring this back into my work? And then this was just everything's going in here, color studies. In one of the things last year about this connection that I was talking about, I started my free Facebook group, and one of the things we do is monthly studio prompts and color prompts. So this playbook has everything in it. So I'm just working through, so it's almost like documenting my life, so this is the January book. Now I don't know if I'll finish it in January or if it will run over to February, or how long, but there's no rules for it. It's just, this is what I was doing at this time. So I think that's all I was going to show you. So I guess I have it here.
What size is that? Is that A4?
A5.
A5.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just coming back to what you were saying at the end about revisiting old work. So this canvas has been on my wall for months before I left the studio before Christmas. And I'd started a few other bits. So here on these, you can see how I'm bringing in this line work, and I want the line work to show through, like on the botanical bits on that painting I showed you. So mixing this together, and again, looking at the quantity, like that's all fabric and paint. So how does that work in comparison? And then working on this. So this, it's been a million different paintings already. And it's like, you need to find your way with it. So I'm thinking now, because when I came back in, I thought, oh, I'll just pick up where I left off. And do you know what? I just couldn't, because I'm not there.
No, I know.
So then I was, and
then you're just a whole new process, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'm at risk of like painting over the whole bloody thing. But what I did think was, is there a way now just to test this idea? And like I said, I've not got a hard, fast plan, like these are going to be translated into paintings. They're not. They're just a collection of ideas. However,
can I just sort of respond to that? Because I think that, I think what you're talking about there is like collection of ideas. I think it's really interesting about how, it can be something as simple, can't it, as just a mark on a page.
Yeah.
Or the way, a line bisects another line, or, or the edge of something that can be a jumping off point, or that can just somehow fuel something in your creative process that allows you to take it further. So I think it's important, just thinking about people who might be listening to this, who think about, how do you use a sketchbook? And there's a lot of kind of really unhelpful rules and myths about sketchbook practice and what you should and shouldn't do, and all of that kind of stuff, which I think it's really prescriptive, which I think is very unhelpful. I think for me, what I've found useful in this process, I think in a way put similar to you, is that, it needs to be something that actually slots and fits in with your day-to-day practice in your life, that feels comfortable. And it isn't, I don't think, necessarily about, doing something that, like you say, on a page that is going to immediately translate to something. It might be that there's 3 or 4 little tiny moments in the book that somehow come together in a way that you're not anticipating 6 months later, that results in a piece of work that you like.
Yes. Yeah. And it might just be, like I'm thinking here, oh, do I need more shape? Oh, what shape do I want? Now, instead of me spending hours thinking about another shape that I want to bring in, maybe I could just look back to this and think, oh, I love how this meets this, or, and it's just like a quick reference. So it's almost just building your own library, if you like, of reference material that then you can jump back in. So, and you just start to notice things like how many things I love around the edges.
And
you
do, don't you?
And even when we went back to that first painting that I said I was really happy with, that's got an edge all the way around it.
It has.
So it's just, it's that good old thing about really noticing what you like and following the energy in it, and just allowing, like there's some of these pages in here that will never see the light of day again, probably, but at the time I just thought, oh, what does that color look like next to that? What does that so it's just a place that I can be really free and see, this was something I was doing last night. It's one of our color prompts. And I was just then, thinking, oh, do I like that color with that? Do I like that? And then immediately that tiny color palette led to, something else. So it's just, I'm hoping that this will just be like almost a running commentary of my creative practice and thoughts and ideas. And then, I don't know, see how it supports my practice in the studio. Will be interesting this year. But I'm really, I've never felt attached at all to a sketchbook. And I think partly because I've never really seen how I can integrate it into my work. I've never used it like that. I've had, and I keep them separate, one for color mixing, one for mark making, one for this. And then by the time I'm thinking, oh, where did I put that? I'll have like loads of separate books. If I want them to inform what I'm doing and you know, be very present with the work, I like the thought of having it all in one.
Yeah,
because
I think it's a great idea. And you're giving me ideas as well, you know, as I'm looking at what you've been doing. Because like you know, I've never had a particularly consistent experience with sketchbooks, and I've used them a lot over the years, you know, in one form or another. You know, initially I would be using that, and I used to love them a lot actually. I used to go out sort of sketching the landscape, you know, and I'd take watercolors and some pens and go out there and do sort of plein air sketching. And in that respect, they were quite enjoyable. It was just kind of a fun thing to do. But I've not yet found a way, other than doing challenges, where I'll consistently dive into the sketchbook for a month or so. That's been useful. But I've not found a way to use it that kind of goes alongside really our practice in a way that feels more consistent.
Supports your practice, that you can dip back into it, like your own, like I was saying, your own source reference, your own, you know, it's like your visual journal,
you know. And I think
if I think feed your work.
You know, I'm thinking
the other thing that's really
go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry, you it glitched there.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Did you say something?
No, I just said no, go on, because I was aware of the fact I just interrupted you.
Oh, okay. The other thing, you know how when we get a favorite piece of collage, or a favorite piece of fabric, and what we normally say is, oh, put it in the paintings, everything goes in. Da, da, da. Well, there's some things that you just think that's too, you know, I don't want it just to be lost under layers of paint. So there's a few things in here, like my first page, this piece here, I think it was out of a magazine years ago, but it's hung around my studio. It's always on a wall. It's always in a box. It's always somewhere. And it's not much, but for me, I love the shape. I love the colors, the proportions. And I don't want that to be in a painting or lost somewhere, because I want to continually go back to look at it. You know, so it's like now I have lots of things like that I can keep in this book, or like little paintings that I've done that are never going to go anywhere. They're just in bottoms of collage boxes. So it's just a way of keeping things really present for me that I love.
It's a really good idea.
We'll see how it goes, but I feel really passionate about it, and I've already got such a connection with the book, which is really nice for me, because, you know, let's face it, life is busy. I'm not in the studio all the time now. You know, so it's losing. I felt really like discombobulated last year after I lost what I feel like I lost a bit of connection with my practice. I mean, I was still doing things, you know, like I said, I painted all the fabrics. I was doing lots of prep work, but actually, you know, creating like side by side things, and really, you know, like you ignite your own fire when you sort of playing with it. And that's the bit I missed. So I thought I'm not letting that happen. Not that I can't let it happen, you know, I won't let that happen. So that kind of brings you up to date with where I am. So I don't know what will happen with this. It might carry on, it might not. But apart from that, I've just ordered a load of new panels and prepped them. So I'm hoping that some of these might guide some of the panels. But again, no pressure on it. They're just, you know, I'm just left
wait and see what happens with it.
So
brilliant. Cool. So what shall we talk about last year's projects, some of the key sort of projects that we've had go over the last year or so? Do you want to carry on talking, or shall I go next?
Well, I thought it might be a nice opening for you, talking about sketchbooks, to talk about your project.
Yes, I did. So
I could assist you.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, my glorious assistant here.
Yes.
So what happened with that? Well, I mean, like you, so last year was incredibly busy, in a good way, and I ran Directions and Abstraction, which is my 10-week online course, which is it's a deep dive, really, I think, into various different elements of abstraction, and particularly for people who want to kind of really begin to start to find their authentic expression or authentic voice. So at the end of that, I'd lost some connection, I felt, with my kind of art practice. You know, I had been painting because I've been doing demonstration pieces throughout the course, but it didn't feel the same, you know, and I was aware of the fact that I was actually quite tired. I needed some time off, which I took. And then it was like, okay, so how am I going to get back into this? Because also I was aware of the fact that I had a big show coming up in the autumn with the need to kind of make some more work. And what I'd worked in the past, I'd known, I kind of had a sense that, you know, previously I'd done a deep dive into my sketchbook practice, which is, you know, something is really keep it really open-ended, really simple. Excuse me, each day to do something in the sketchbook, and just, you know, and just to see what happened from that, again without any intention that these pieces are going to turn into paintings or anything like that, purely from a play and exploration perspective, really. So that's what I did. I think it was July. Yeah, it was July. I took the whole month, and I opened it up as well for other people to join me on Instagram. But I kept it fairly open-ended. You know, join even if you want. Do a prompt. Don't do a prompt. Do this one. Don't do that one. You know, and people could post and share their images if they wanted to. And then at the end of it, I thought, actually, you know, there's quite a lot of material here that people might find useful. So I wrote it up into a book. You know, I took all of the prompts from each of the days. That's right. I did some additional text, actually, some additional commentary for the book on what I'd learned from the process of that particular day. And also there are some kind of reflective prompts as well, because I spend quite a lot of time, you know, thinking about what I've been doing, and I don't always write it down, but I think because I've, you know, because of my previous job of doing a lot of kind of internal reflection really on various different things, you know, it's a habit that's not going to go away, and I find it really useful actually to kind of deconstruct one, you know, pick it apart. What was I doing? What did I like? What didn't I like? You know, where did I find my energy was going? You know, what were the impulses? Just to kind of understand that process better, I think, which helps me then in my work in general. So I put together a whole load of questions like that alongside each daily prompt for people to do or not do if they want to. And like I say, the whole thing is either available as a PDF or a book. And I think because I found it such an interesting process, I've decided I'm going to do another couple of years. So I'll do one this year and I'll do one next year. And in both cases, I'll write it up as a book. But I think, you know, each time it will be different. You know, it'll be a different approach, I think, to how to perhaps use a sketchbook in your practice. So yeah, so it's been, yeah, it was useful. I mean, and you know, like you were saying about things coming out of you know, the process, there are 2 or 3 recurring elements that I noticed over the period of the month, one of which is was the use of a kind of particular form of expression and a particular palette, which was this kind of very pale pink and lemon yellow and black, with some little tiny spots of really intense purple and green, which were a bit unusual. And yeah, there are 2, I can't remember what page they're on actually. I'll just get a copy myself.
I just turned to a page that was the pink and orange, but it's not got the
No, I think I'll have a quick look. It's towards the back actually, if I remember rightly. If you want to have a look at it with me. Yeah, page day 26.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so that kind of expression happened 2 or 3 times. This color, the kind of, you know, and like you were saying about little marks and bits and pieces, like I was saying, that really catch your attention, you know, on that page, on the kind of second,
I was going to say,
there's some little tiny bits of purple and green, you know, that were actually, you know, picked up off a random piece of paper that I'd used to lift paint. You know, but as I spotted that, I thought, actually, that's really interesting. And that idea has brought something new into my current work. So what I've started to do as a result of that kind of, I really like that. You know, I've started to bring in colours that are much more diverse, a lot less what I'd expect to see in my work, and just put little tiny touches of them in. So, for example, that triptych that I was talking about that I was struggling with, one of the things I do like about it is that I've brought in some really quite strong, deep lilac and some quite strong, bright green. And it feels really different, you know. Yeah, so that's been fun. So
I love
yeah,
how,
so
sorry,
creative connections. No, go on, sorry.
I love how all these things are connected, and it just really shows you that you have to continue following your own path, your own nudges, you know, because just by doing this and pushing yourself through this month of, you know, completing this, new things started to happen. That was back in July. Now you're bringing these things into your practice 6 months later, you know, and it's like, it gives me such, always gives me such trust in the journey, that if you, as long
trust
as
the process,
keep taking those next steps that feel right to you, whether you see an outcome immediately, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 2 years, it'll happen. You know, it does happen. We've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just really, I think, reassuring. To continue.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. And I think, you know, talking about that, I think that's one of the things that I'll sort of move on actually to, because I think it's connected to the course that I ran towards the end of the year, which was my new program called Mindset Transitions. You know, in many respects, that's kind of what I was hoping to teach people, along with kind of a lot of other stuff when I ran that course. You know, like I said a few minutes ago, like trust the process.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of trust the process, trust yourself, actually.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, as an artist. And so one of the things that some of the things I think that course focused on was about how to, you know, learn how to pay more attention to those kinds of impulses, and to begin to learn to kind of tune into that. Because if people haven't done that before, and not everybody has, you know, kind of like, how do you start to notice those kind of impulses? How do you start to pay attention to that, and to listen into it, lean into it, to follow it? And I think, you know, I think that not everybody has had the practice in doing that. And so something that actually helps you with that, I think, is quite useful, because I think in some respects that's what Creative Shift's about, isn't it?
We have
similarly
modules on things like that, like notice what you're noticing. You know, when do you slow down to really notice? You know, like, even everything that surrounds us, how are you shaping up your world? You know, when you take pictures, when, like I was talking about the playbook, I like things at the sides, I like things this. Well, where do you like the weight in your, you know, visual imagery? Where do you like little things coming in? Where do you like, you know, so it's all of those things, and really honoring your own preferences and your own likes, you know, just because I think sometimes a lot of artists say to me, well, is that okay for that? And it's like, it's almost like we've got out the habit of trusting our own likes, you know, because so-and-so does it this way, or so-and-so does it that way. Oh, is my way okay then? You know, so it's really trying to support that and show exactly what we've just been talking about. The connection in your work is your own personal thread. You know, I'm sure if you look back on your work, even years ago when it wasn't abstract, there'll still be something there that has brought you through, you know, to here, because we have our core preferences and we can't help those. You know, that's innate within us. So yes, it's all about that. They're very similar, and I think the strands of them are quite similar.
I think they are similar. I think what I've done with mine, I think, is sort of almost kind of split it into two a little bit. So Directions and Abstraction, I think, focuses a lot more on the technicalities of making the work, you know, like composition, like using collage, line, shape. What are your preferences? So some of the things that you were just talking about. And then I think I run a second course at the end of the year called Mindset Transitions, which is much more about the psychology, I think, of your own process. And because I've got a psychology background, I've put quite a lot of theory attached to that, although I'm going to take a lighter touch, I think, with that this next year. But so
nice.
Okay, so any more to say on any of those kind of things in terms of, what about your projects this last year? Because I know Creative Shift was a big one for you.
Yes, Creative Shift was huge for me last year, and just wonderful. I had an amazing group, and even people that felt quite shy about participating, even on Zoom calls and stuff. By the end of it, they were like really active members of the group. And it's to be honest, it is obviously about the work, but it's like self-development. It's like personal development. It's everything that's within you. You know, if you don't want to sound too like lingo-y, but it's this, you know, being your authentic self, being as you as you can be, then that comes out in the work, and it's like the work reflects where you are, you know, and it's all of, you know, anyway, so that was it was amazing. And this year I was going to run it again in September, but it clashes with some things on my calendar, so I've brought it forward to April.
Oh, okay. So it's
quite soon, yeah. So at the moment I'm going through like content and reworking some of the worksheets, and just last year was 8 weeks, but after a vote in the group, I took notice of what people said, and they said they'd like it to be 10 weeks. Okay. It does
spread out a bit.
Have a bit of breathing space in there, because some of it can feel quite intense. Like you say, when you're not used to working in that introspective way and that reflective way, sometimes it's a new way of thinking. It can take a minute to catch up with yourself and let those ideas really sort of absorb. So that's coming up. I have got a few nice projects I'm working on, but as I say, I'm not really planning to show my work this year. Not to say that I won't sell it. I've not it will be for sale, but I think I'm still trying to find that nice rhythm where I just want to be in my practice. I want to paint and then have work for sale. I don't want to have this like working for 3 months and then have a big launch, and then it's just, I'm finding it just doesn't suit me personality wise like that. I want this gentle flow with it.
I think it's important to go with what works for you as well, actually, isn't it? Rather than not. I mean, I think in terms of what I've got coming up next year, well, I've got Directions in Abstraction, which starts at the end of March, which I'm looking forward to. I mean, I think I think one of the things I just want to say about that as well, because I think it's my experience in teaching comes from, I was working it out the other day, I think I've been teaching since I was probably in my early 30s, which feels like that's quite a long time. I think what I know about myself as a teacher is that I'm better as a teacher with a group of a kind of small to medium sized group, and that's what I enjoy doing. So I do run live teaching groups where the material is taught live rather than a recorded video group and then coaching sessions afterwards, because I think they work for lots of people, particularly if you can't commit to a specific slot each week.
Time zones,
because that's not always great for people. But I think one of the things I'm particularly interested in, because I'm really interested, I think, in helping people find their own personal way of expressing themselves creatively. That's what I'm really interested in, I think. For me, I think I'm better at doing that if I work with a small group, actually. So all my courses are like that at the moment anyway. So both Directions in Abstraction and also Mindset Transitions are both small group courses where we have a specific time each week and I teach live in that group. And it means I get to be able to really know people, and I enjoy that. It works for me. It's an approach that I like. So that's happening, which feels good. And then I've got a solo show actually talking about making work. That feels like it's going to be a biggie. That's in the autumn, actually. That's with a gallery over in Sheffield. So, very much a UK based thing. But kind of it feels really interesting. I think it's going to be quite an interesting process for me, because it's going to require about 30 to 40 paintings. So that's a big, it's a big make, actually. Because it's a fairly big space. It's a fairly big space that they've got.
Nice.
So I was looking at it the other day and taking photographs and thinking, this is quite a lot to fill. I need to kind of get on with it.
Oh, I'm glad I said yes. Wow. Okay. So haven't you were showing other places or?
As well. Yeah.
Wow. Busy year for you.
Yeah, it will be a busy year. And, we'll see how it goes. But apart from, I'm doing the Bath Art Fair at the end of February, which is fairly soon, but that's quite small, in terms of my stand anyway. I mean, the event itself was pretty big, but I've got a smallish stand because it was a last minute thing. So other than that, I am not showing any work up until the autumn. So I've got kind of the rest of the year. So a big gap. I mean, I'm admittedly in the local gallery, which I do quite well in. But that's kind of ones and twos. It's not, needing like 20 or 30 paintings for a big event. So so that's my plan for the year, really.
Good. Sounds good.
It feels exciting. It feels exciting. It'd be good, I think. that'll be good. You're talking about word for the year, and you
Mhm.
were saying that yours was connection, I think. Was that right, for this last year and
Yeah.
this year?
So yes, last year was like relationship focused around people, and this year I thought I'm keen to keep the same word because I want to regain my focus around my practice. So it's like, how does everything connect in, which was part of introducing my playbook. So I just want this connection to be in the studio. What's your...
It's actually abundance in the end. That's what I've settled on. Yeah, because I thought, it helps, that idea that there is enough to go around and we don't need to compete with each other for anything, and I think you could take that larger and get political with it if you want. And I think, in the right setting that will do that. But, given we're talking about art, I think it's also really applicable to this as well, which is the idea that, if we think that there is enough to go around, then it puts me in a place of being generous, actually, being generous with my, with my work, making, more work available for people at kind of prices that people can afford. So, this year I am going to be regularly doing things like with older work, that I think actually, I'm happy to kind of let this go to somebody, at a much more kind of at a half price or a sale price, because like you say, sometimes when we've had things around, we still love it, but we don't need to kind of keep it in the same way. So I think things like that, sort of making more of my time available, I think, to people, through sort of through the groups that I'm doing, through the Facebook community that I run, which is called Art Fluency, being in there and being available kind of to people in that way, and also being generous around doing kind of challenges and the opportunity to kind of take part in those and maybe have prizes and stuff like that, and that's been fun, so doing things like that, I think, as part of that, making more things available to people, I think. And then with other artists and stuff like that, looking for like collaborations, like working with you on things, and sharing things as well, really. And it feels like it's a better place to be.
It does feel good when I think when you can just live quite transparent about things and just live your life, and it does. It's quite liberating to just be you, and just do the actions that feel right, and don't do things out of shoulds or coulds or because she's doing that or that's working for her. It's like, just don't get caught up in the noise of everything, and go your own way.
Because there is quite a lot of that, and it can take you, I think, to a place that's not helpful. Like you were saying about comparing yourself with others, what they're doing, that maybe I should do that, or so and so's doing that, maybe I should do that. You've got to hold on to your own mind, I think.
Well, I think I'm usually really quite good at that, and it was only early in this year when I was doing the planning, I spoke to one of my artist friends and I shared like, a little bit worried, and she was like, well, that's because you're comparing yourself. And I thought, I really had to catch myself. I thought, am I? And I thought, I probably am. So luckily I'm really good at shutting that down and being like, hang on a minute, why have I made the decisions I've made? Why does my life look like this? Why does my year look like this? And as soon as you have that sort of you recalibrate with yourself, it's like, okay, I'm good, I know why I'm doing that. But it's be really mindful of your thoughts, how they can stray.
I think so. So that's it for me, really, I think, for this year. Hopefully a year of abundance, both giving it out and maybe receiving, because that would be nice.
And go on, sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, just before we go, just recap on how can people find you, or where can we find your courses or your free Facebook group? Okay,
I think for both of us, we can drop some links, can't we, below the recording? So they'll be in the recording. But other than that, you can find everything over on my website, actually, which is www.linsea-art.com. So.
Okay, cool. And same with mine, www.sally-annashley.com, and everything's on there.
But the links will be below in the show notes. That's what they say, isn't it?
In the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess you'll catch Sally-Ann and I at various different places this year, and I guess we'll probably come back and do this again next year actually, because I think I've enjoyed it. It's been fun.
Yeah, nice.
Okay. And I will just say goodbye and stop the recording.
Bye.
Bye.